India, once called the bottomless pit for foreign aid and ranked a little lower than Pakistan in terms of global importance, has emerged as the fifth largest economy in the world. One of the common questions regarding India's success story is the status of its unofficial rat race as Asia's most vibrant economy. So let's see how that has fared. In January 2023, India achieved a significant milestone by surpassing China and becoming the world's most populous country, with approximately 1.417 billion people, as reported by the World Population Review (WPR). Analysts believe this shift in the country's demographics presents a golden opportunity for increasing productivity across the various economic sectors. This surge in population not only makes India the largest, but also secures its place as one of the countries with the largest youth population. And if India milks this demographic advantage by focusing on effective education, health programs, and job opportunities, the results will be mind-blowing. However, India's focus is on a much bigger prize, becoming the third largest economy in 2030 and outstripping the United States as the world's largest economy in 2075. A towering ambition indeed, and only possible if India follows its recent success map. Otherwise, its coin could get lost in the wishing well. China, too, experienced a miraculous boost in its economy and monopolized that prestigious position for decades. But recently, things seem to be on the wrong track with the Asian giants. Analysts say China is aging, and its recent population loss might just be the extreme effect of its overwhelming challenges. While India gained demographically, China experienced a decline of 850,000 for the first time in 60 years, as per data from China's National Bureau of Statistics. The country's economy, which was once celebrated, is now in chaos, with its GDP growing by just 3% in 2022. For a fact, China's recent troubles with COVID-19 and its rocky relationship with the West have led to major investors and industries seeking non-Chinese alternatives. You can probably guess where many of these investments landed. Between 2021 and 2022, India recorded a remarkable foreign direct investment inflow of nearly $85 billion. Of course, there are other players we can't but mention when talking about India's insane economic growth. One of the major factors influencing India's economic growth is the size of its workforce. Indian service providers have shown competency that equates that of Westerners, and their hourly rates are surprisingly cheaper. Reports show that in 2030, when most countries will have a workforce comprising middle-aged or elderly citizens, India will still be young. On top of that, India has become an abode for engineers and tech-savvy entrepreneurs, with many of them employed by domestic and international telecommunications, IT, and software companies such as Intel, Texas Instruments, Yahoo, Meta, Google, and Microsoft. Also, India is big on business process outsourcing. What began as a small labor market in the mid-90s has grown to a vibrant market dominated by companies such as American Express, IBM, Hewlett-Packard, and Dell. Factors like risk mitigation, low-cost advantage, and the competency of its workforce are the driving force behind this miraculous growth. Today, the service industry accounts for 55% of the country's GDP. And despite its proximity to China, India has surprisingly benefited from the pandemic. You didn't expect to hear this, right? Well, it's no longer headlines that major Western corporations are trying to establish a presence in India. Companies like Apple, Tesla, and Amazon are some of the top players interested in this historic move. For Apple, this decision is part of its efforts to reduce reliance on China, given the disruptions experienced as a result of the pandemic. Only in November last year, Apple's manufacturing hub in Zhengzhou, China was temporarily shut down. Apple's decision to rethink its supply chain saw investments taking root in India with an ultimate aim of making 25% of all iPhones in the country. More so, several European and Japanese companies as well have joined this race, increasing their investments in India as they seek alternatives other than China. Like Apple, Tesla, and the other top brands, Suzuki Motor is also planning to jump in on India's large domestic market, projecting production of 1 million vehicles in India. For a fact, these companies rely on the competency of the Indian workforce, plus its low costs, to make their plans a reality. And although India's unemployment rate is a ticking time bomb, the country has shown resilience in the past and will do so again if it capitalizes on this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Who knows? 2075 may come sooner than expected. Aside from the fortunate tides of the pandemic, India's globalization reforms are one of the major reasons the country is where it is today. To truly understand the huge role globalization has played in India, we must head back to the very moment India decided to open up its borders. The 1900s were a crazy period for most countries, as most of them were just escaping the clutches of colonialism. India gained independence in 1947, becoming the first country to rid itself of British rule after the Second World War. Post-independence India tilted toward a centrally planned economy, with the government controlling the means of production and distribution. However, this economic decision didn't work well for the Asian country, and it found itself under the weight of an economic nightmare. The gross mismanagement of the economy resulted in the country's external debt far outweighing its revenue. India, a once self-reliant nation, began to seek aid from the rest of the world. During this period, India became nothing short of a beggar nation and was derisively called a bottomless pit for foreign aid. To make things worse, India's viable economic relations with the Soviets shattered when the Eastern Bloc collapsed in 1989. India's last hope was getting a loan from the IMF, as what remained in its reserves could last the country no more than a few weeks. Fortunately, the IMF offered to help, but not without some necessary recommendations. And that was how liberalization, privatization, and globalization became the driving force of India's economic reforms. Its impact led to India's massive breakout in the IT space, as it emerged as one of the world's major exporters of IT products and services. In addition, India experienced a huge rise in its stock market value as the Asian country became a fertile ground for foreign investors. Also, companies in the public sector were sold to private sector companies, and the means of production and distribution were free from government control. Before all this, India operated a closed market and lacked foreign players. But with the 1991 reforms, India opened itself to global trade and opportunities, resulting in the expansion of its global supply chain, and we can see how far the country has progressed since then. Over the years, the effects of globalization have increased the standard of living and influenced huge growth in sectors such as pharmaceuticals, BPO, petroleum, manufacturing, and chemical sectors, as foreign companies invested in these areas. India also experienced a digital surge within its borders as foreign companies who set bases on Indian soil brought in highly advanced tech. The use of homegrown technologies like Autovia 2 and Digiatra apps, along with access to global platforms like Google and Facebook, which of course are banned in China, has given the Indian youth an edge in digital knowledge and resources. And as more of these companies established India-based outlets, the country experienced a reverse brain drain effect, with several professionals returning home to take up jobs in the Indian outlets of their foreign employers. It gets even better as India's technological development has spurred the creation of hundreds of engineering colleges. Each year, about 1.5 million students are admitted to these colleges, a quarter of whom go on to be world-class professionals. Now, the more recent news is that the United States is seeking to strengthen its ties with India in order to gain a strategic advantage over China, which is on a solo mission to de-dollarize the world. This pursuit of closer cooperation between the US and India led to the signing of two pivotal military agreements in 2020. The first is the Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement, BECA, for geospatial cooperation, encouraging access to classified information between both countries to promote an intimate level of cooperation. And the second agreement is the LMOA, the Logistics Exchange Memorandum of Agreement, which enables access to each other's military facilities for logistics support, further enhancing their military partnership. The exchange of strategic information is not only crucial, but it is also an avenue for the United States to strengthen its presence in Asia, and at the same time offer India the opportunity of establishing itself as a strong and independent military force. The US-India relationship have gone way back, as President George W. Bush once supported India's entry into the nuclear club, and President Obama backed India for a seat in the Security Council. India is also a prominent member of the World Trade Organization, the G20, BRICS, and SCO. The largeness of India's domestic market is perhaps a myth that needs no demystification. For instance, India's workforce is projected to tally around 1 billion people in a few decades. It is the world's largest consumer of mobile phones and also the largest importer of arms. India has also emerged as the world's biggest user of internet-based apps, and as per oil consumption, it is the third largest consumer in the world. These are proven facts that present India as a highly profitable country. In fact, the World Economic Forum predicts India's consumption spending would grow from its present $1.5 trillion to a staggering $6 trillion in just 2030. It's no surprise why Western corporations want a piece of this cake, because by all accounts, India's economic ascent is defying the boundaries of imagination. Now more than ever, world-class corporations are in a rat race to woo Indian customers, leading to the localization of their goods and services. It's interesting how the Indian domestic system works. A large fraction of its 300 million consumer base isn't interested in foreign products, but has shown greater confidence in homemade products. This cuts across sectors like manufacturing, luxury, and food. Thankfully, the Indian government is aware of the potential of its domestic market and has initiated several policies to ensure it makes the best of it. This brings us to what many of you probably have heard or not heard about: the Make in India scheme. Launched in September 2014 by India's Prime Minister, the Make in India scheme is devised to transform the country into a global manufacturing and design hub. The plan is to improve India's ease of doing business rate, thereby encouraging foreign companies to invest and manufacture in India. This grand plan cuts across 27 sectors, including major players like pharmaceuticals and medical devices, chemicals and petrochemicals, food processing, information technology and information technology-enabled services, and the list goes on. One of the motivations behind the Made in India scheme is to level the playing field between the manufacturing sector and the service industry, and in the process tackle one of its ancient enemies, unemployment. For the first time in its history, the Indian railways, insurance, and defense sectors have been opened up for foreign investments. And already, the defense sector has recorded a shift in its FDI from 49% to an incredible 74% in 2016. There are also plans to skill up 10 million Indians every year and to establish an ecosystem that encourages the growth of startup companies. Additionally, Prime Minister Modi wants to create at least 100 smart cities in India and at the same time improve the country's sanitation and hygiene levels. Once these plans are in place, nothing will stand in the way of India's becoming an economic powerhouse. As India continues its journey, the world watches with interest, knowing that its path to economic prominence holds both potential and challenges that will shape the country's future on the global stage. Any casual observer would certainly recognize the opportunities for transformative growth and impact, while also being mindful of the need for smart decisions, especially with how fragile our world can become. With all eyes on India's progress, its evolving role as a significant player in the global arena becomes a focal point of curiosity and anticipation. One thing's for sure, all the efforts will undoubtedly have far-reaching implications, and how India navigates through these complexities will be a matter of international significance.